Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is Danish singer-songwriter Karen Ørsted, also known as Moo. Moo's just released her latest album, Motordrome. The record's title refers to the hamster wheel Moo felt like she was on for years, saying yes to everything, never taking a break, all the while dealing with the success of her solo career and her giant 2015 smash with Major Lazer, Lean On. To this day, that song is still one of the most streamed tracks of all time. By the end of the touring cycle for her second album, Forever Neverland, Moo felt like she'd lost herself, so for the first time she stepped back, took time away and tried to get back in touch with who she was as a person and an artist. For a woman who spent her formative years playing in punk bands and deeply involved with the activist and anarchist scenes in Denmark, it was an opportunity to remember where she came from and chart the path of where she was going. The end result is her third album that just released, Motordrome. We talk about that whole journey in this interview, as well as the contrast between Moo's musical upbringing in punk and her eventual breakthrough as a pop artist. But we started by talking about Motordrome. It seems that one of the catalysts for the sound and the themes of the record was the time that you took off, the brief time you took off after finishing touring your previous album, Forever Neverland. What state were you in when that touring cycle finished up?
When I was touring with Motordrome, no, not with Motordrome, oh my God, with Forever Neverland, you know, I was excited for the album to be out and everything, but at the time I had just not really been taking any breaks for like a long time. And I just, for a long time, just not allowing myself to take that time to find out what I, wanted in music and what I wanted as a private person as well. So I just kept going and like kept postponing all these things. And so at some point during this Forever Neverland tour, I hit a wall. Like I started getting anxiety and I've never had that before. And my voice was broken. And it was just like, all of a sudden I just realized, because I knew that I'd been pushing myself hard. But all of a sudden I was like, okay, here comes the check, like the bill that you have to pay after so many years of being euphoric and just like traveling and keep going.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like that realization and me starting to just, wind down on touring and, clean up a bunch of things on the business side of things, but also my private life, that was really what inspired the beginning of this album.
I mean, when you decide to take a little bit of time off and you go home, what do you do? I
mean, to begin with, it was very strange because it was just, going from one pretty extreme lifestyle to another where it's all of a sudden was really going from 100 to a 0. So in the beginning, it felt very strange and like it's just weird. It didn't feel like my life actually. It was like my whole world was just spinning in a way. And like, again, also with the anxiety thing, like just the thoughts were just going in circles. And honestly, I just had a really hard time really feeling myself, if that doesn't sound too abstract.
Not at all.
So the first couple of months were just, in a way, just me like coming back into my body a little bit again.
Sure.
But then all of a sudden also just realizing how much I've missed my friends and my family and like all these little things in life that I've just been neglecting a little bit because I've just been so busy chasing my dreams.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with chasing your dreams, but like I've just been doing one thing for so long, having tunnel vision. And, I don't think that's healthy for any humans, to just only do one thing at all times only.
Absolutely. Is it hard though? Because you must have had to say no to certain things. There must have been pressures on you and people saying it's time to do another record.
Absolutely.
How did you come to terms with saying no after presumably saying yes for so many years?
Yes. No, exactly. But I think that was really the thing is that was what I realized. That was that had been one of my biggest problems, I think, was that I was so scared of conflict and so scared of saying no or like, it seems that it's the usual that you as an artist has to just be like available and like wanting to keep going and keep doing what you do and like say yes to all great opportunities. And I've just been so like that had just been engraved into my mind so heavily that it didn't seem like an option. And all of a sudden I was like, fuck, okay, this is actually that thing that I do need to face. And I do need to be brave enough to tell people that I need to look out for myself. I need to put myself first.
Yeah.
Because I think in the end of the day, if I want to be successful, and I mean, this sounds banal, but like if you want to be successful, you need to have yourself in it, you know, and you need to recharge yourself and you need to feel grounded in what you do. And all this was just like a realization for me all of a sudden. So it was really like, fuck, okay.
Yeah.
Time to say no and, you know, confront it, you know.
That's a lot to deal with. Were there key learnings that came out of that?
One of the things was just figuring out the right people to work with, like the people that are close to you in your business. Like, so that was a big part of it. And then also with this new team, just agreeing that health comes first, you know. But then it was also small things like just, you know, you can't contact me on a Sunday, or like my phone is shut after this time, or like I won't turn it on like until this time in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, just little things to create small routines in a not very routine-based kind of job, you know.
Sure. Setting boundaries by the sounds of things.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to.
How are you going with it?
Oh, it's going better. But like, you know, it was like in the beginning, it was very much that thing of like, oh, fuck, how do I do this?
So when you started to get that clarity and you started to connect with your friends and start to feel more like yourself, was that when the writing started for the record?
Yeah, the writing started also a little bit before again. Like, I think when it was also a bit just like kind of tough and me just being confused about what was going on, like actually writing music was a way for me to start seeing things a little bit clearer. And I've experienced that many times in my life, that writing music is a way for me to understand my situation or like struggle or sadness a little bit better in a way. And so I did start writing some of these songs during the time where it was hard, you know, but as you say, like as I started to feel better, that kind of provoked some of these more like empowering songs on the album, like Live to Survive or like New Moon or Punches. That's a bit more like, yeah, I'll fucking, you know, I'll pull through this. Whereas in the beginning, it was more like Goosebumps and Wheel Spin, you know, and these ones where it was kind of like, fuck, oh my God, shit, you know, I'm sad. Yeah.
You mentioned the song Punches, and it's got that line in it. It's a brand new day, sing my favorite song, teaching me to be bold. It's a brand new day. Is that capturing that essence of what you were just saying then, that feeling that...
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was meant to sum up how I was. Yeah, exactly.
There's a great positivity to that sentiment.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice way to ending the album. It's like, it's not that I have figured everything out and everything is perfect now. It's more like just that thing of like realizing it's a process. And now at least I know where my journey begins, you know, and that's a really big step forward.
The word Motordrome is in that song. Is that, what does Motordrome represent to you?
To me, it really represents this hamster wheel, I guess. I just think... Usually, you know, I couldn't call my album Hamster Wheel because that would just be a weird fucking title. But like it sort of has the same sort of meaning, I guess, this thing again, like this thing about running around in the loop and working out from a place of fear that if you stop everything, it will crash, you know. The sense of just spinning out of reason in a way. And that's the symbolicness or whatever you say about the title. Yeah.
Sure. Did you have any of your peers that you could confide in or that could give you advice who had been through something similar to you in terms of that feeling of burnout and how to get over it?
Yeah, I did speak to some of my music colleagues about these kind of things. And like just when I also, and I talked to many people during this whole period of time, and just realizing how many actually had struggled with panic attacks and anxiety or like burnout and stress and the, you know, things about the industry and like being a woman in the industry and like all these things. Like I've had so many conversations. And again, when you struggle with something, I think people tend to think that you're the only one and that you're crazy and that it's like so, you know, you feel so alone. But then you realize so many other people struggle with it. And that's like such a big help. When it comes to recovery, like it really, really, really helps so much. I was, of course, really sad to find out that so many people have had these kind of struggles, but it just made me, it just really helped me so much, you know, to meet that.
Absolutely. Just talking about the song Punches again, you know, there's reference to Bikini Kill, and there's a line, praise the riot, not forgotten. Are these sort of summoning things that were important to you when you were a little bit younger and that perhaps represent that true you that you were trying to recover? Is that those references relate to?
Yeah. No, totally. That line was specifically meant for like a little line to myself, I guess, almost like, remember what you come from, remember who you are. And it isn't that you need to stay who you are, because like it's good to develop as well. And it's good to try out different things, like no regrets, but just remember what you love, like what feels good in your stomach,
And Bikini Kill were big. Kathleen Hanna was a big artist for you.
Big inspiration, like that whole Riot Girl movement from that whole area of that time in the 90s was like really big, even though, I was not there for it. Like I was a little bit too young, but when I got a bit older and I got into punk rock and that kind of music, like they were like big heroes to me.
Yeah.
Like Sonic Youth. Kim Gordon, she was like my biggest role model of all times.
Yes. Yeah. I do want to talk to you about Kim and Sonic Youth, but just a little bit more on the album. And I want to talk to you about the song New Moon.
Yeah.
Which has that line, I'm not that somebody that you used to bully, which is a real line of strength again. And I think I've read you talking about the fact that the song was inspired by some of your experiences in the industry, particularly as a woman and perhaps feeling not seen and not heard. Is that the essence of the song?
Yeah, I think it is speaking to the struggles that I've sometimes experienced, like receiving the respect that, like looking back on it, that I think that I deserved actually, and just having to always fight against this whole board of men who like just kind of, and only like maybe not directly, but just indirectly over time patronizing you a little bit. And again, I think a lot of these situations and a lot of these people, they don't think that they do it, but it's something that's in sort of like the system and in the way that we speak to each other in this industry sometimes. And over time, when it becomes a lot of that, in the end, I experienced myself just feeling like I wasn't good enough. And that's not inspiring. Like, that's not how it should be. Because also, it was also like, in a way, writing that song, it's also like to myself, like, why did you play along with that? I'm also part of the system. And like, it has to not be like this. And I'm not that person anymore. I don't ever want to be that person anymore,
Yeah. What was writing it? How did it feel putting those words on the page and then singing them when you were recording them?
It actually just felt really, really good. Because sometimes it's that thing, and it was the same with Live to Survive a little bit. It's like you sing about something that you actually find hard to deal with in real life. But then when you sing the song and you write the lyrics, you almost take on a little bit of a superhero character on you.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, that superhero becomes you a little bit while you do it. And that just gives you energy, and like to actually face the situation afterwards. So it felt great.
You mentioned Live to Survive there, and I think you've mentioned that as a song of self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
What
also that, yeah.
What are you forgiving yourself for in that song?
I think that one, it was very much that thing about forgiving myself for having pushed myself so hard for so long and for not having been able to set boundaries, again, as we were talking about earlier on. Because I knew it was going on. I didn't really have the bravery to kind of stop or to tell these people, So yes, that was the forgiveness part of it.
Okay. There really feels like a theme of taking back control, I guess, of things
absolutely.
For this record.
Yeah.
Music.
Absolutely. That's how I feel too.
How did that impact musically what you wanted to do?
I think when I sat down and we're starting to make, in the beginning, to be honest, I didn't really have so many thoughts about so what is the sound going to be? What's it exactly going to sound like? But then as time passed and I was in the process of writing the songs, I just, I had time to sit down and really think about what do I actually sonically, what is my favorite elements in music? What do I just love myself without thinking about what's cool? What do people listen to on Spotify or what do my label think? But just taking a moment to just be what do I think, And that's when I just, again, because I always I love dark synths, and a little bit of an 80s, but also a Scandi sort of and then guitars. And so I was just it has to be something within that world, but also sounding like 2022,
Right.
A little bit, if possible, even though that's always a little bit, you make the music and then it takes years before it comes out. But trying to be like futuristic about it.
Yeah. And did it come easily? Was it an easy process?
I actually wouldn't say that it was easy, but it was a great experience. And it was also really fun. I think like the producer that I've been primarily working with on this album is a Danish producer called Jaxsta.
Mm-hmm.
And so with him, like I really talked to him a lot about the sound, but there was also some other people's involved. So it was sort of like a bit of a patchwork a little bit, but it was not like a ton of people. It was just like a group of people and trying to get it all to work together. But we got there in the end.
All Danish as well?
No, actually, Rod Yates.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I've been dreaming about working with him for years, so I was so excited that it was possible to work on FaceTime and like Skype and stuff during this pandemic, so.
Nice. You mentioned earlier Kim Gordon and Sonic Youth, and I wanted to go back even prior to that, right to the beginning, to growing up in, and my pronunciation here is probably going to be incorrect, but Astrop?
Don't worry.
Astrop, is that?
Astrop, yeah,
right.
Astrop.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of
Very close.
What kind of place was that like to grow up in?
To me, it was, it was safe. It was nice. It was very Danish suburbs, middle class kind of lifestyle. My parents were both teachers. I mean, I found it boring because, I think always as a kid, I was just always energetic and adventurous, and I got bored and I was restless and stuff. But when I look back, even though I was restless and bored, like it was also nice and it was sweet. And it made me dream about other things. So that's good, I guess. It made me dream about traveling and the big city and stuff like that.
and dreaming about being an astronaut at one point, was that a goal?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. For a moment, it was like, it was the thing that I wanted. But then my father told me that I needed to have really, really, really high grades in school. And I was like really shit in school. So that's when that dream sort of just crashed.
That was quick. That was gone.
It was quick. Yeah.
And was there much, I understand your grandfather was an artist. Was there much art in your family? Was music and art something your parents were also concerned with?
Not music, actually. Interesting enough. Like no one in my family knew how to sing or play any instrument. It was only because of luck that we inherited my great-grandmother's old piano. So we had that in the living room, but no one knew how to play it. But because of my grandfather being like, he was like an illustrator actually, but then he did art in his free time.
Okay.
So, there was an interest in art in my family, but that's about it.
Okay. Yes. And your grandfather signed, again, my pronunciation, M-O with it.
Yeah, Mö. Oh my God, you said very right. Yeah.
Okay. He would sign that. He would sign his illustrations with that. Was that the inspiration for you to then take that name years later?
Yeah, it was definitely an inspiration. I didn't really think about it until I sat down and were trying to figure out what my artist name should be. And then all of a sudden it just made sense. I don't remember if he was still alive at that time, if it was like sort of like a way to honor him because he had passed, or if he was still alive but just sick, But it made sense on many levels. Also because, that word mø means to be like a young maiden, So at the time it was really talking to my young burning heart,
right?
Whatever.
And you mentioned inheriting your grandmother's piano. Did you do lessons? Did you take lessons on the piano?
Well, actually, my mom, she forced me to go to this kind of like, what is it, like finger piano, where she's like, okay. And I really wanted to learn how to play chords so I could start like writing songs. But in the little town that I grew up, like all piano lessons that were possible for me was like the sort of like just where you just play with your fingers. So I actually hated it. But then later on, I taught myself how to do the chords.
Okay.
So, yay.
So you had that desire to write songs early. Where did that come from?
Actually, it just happened because I became so obsessed with the Spice Girls when I was like 7 years old or something like that. And I know it sounds banal, but it really was just like, one of those kind of like childhood like obsessions that just puts itself so like deep into your brain that it's like, that is what I need to do. That is the only way. That is the only thing I want. So from a very early age, I just started pursuing that. Yeah.
What did they represent to you? Why do you think they struck such a big chord?
I think it was like the freedom and the energy. And well, music was just something that was, it's hard to explain because as a child, it was like music really had magic, and I remember as a kid, like also speaking about me wanting to be an astronaut, I was always looking for things that would be fantastical or magical or like otherworldly. And it was like music had that quality. And to me, the Spice Girls, they really had that quality too. And they were women, like I could identify with them. And so it was just like, it just was an epiphany, or like I was just, that's what I'm gonna do.
Wow. And did your friends share that love as well, or were you kind of by yourself?
Yes.
Right.
Every girl in my school, basically.
Okay. And did you form a band as well at that point? Did you sort of, once you had some piano skills?
Not long after the whole Spice Girls frenzy, I actually took the initiative. Yeah, to start like a band, like a girl group with some of my friends. And that's when I started writing songs. And I mean, at this point, well, I guess, yeah, I could play some chords on the piano, but like it was super basic and like none of us could sing. But we did kind of start this band. And then from that moment on, like I always had bands or multiple bands and just doing different projects,
Right. Was there a path that you could see to this pop stardom, or were you just, it wasn't even about that at that point? It was just, I'm going to do it and it will happen.
I mean, I really badly wanted to be like super famous pop star at this moment. Like, I was like 7 or 8 years old. So it was just very like one-dimensional. It was just very like, I want to be like the Spice Girls,
Yeah.
And then I remember I had a really cool music teacher that said like, yeah, if you keep working hard, you will get it one day. And that, I remember that just made me so excited. That made me like, if she say that, then it is going to happen,
Yeah, that's so important to have someone who can actually give you that hope.
I really agree. Good teachers is like the wine of life.
So did you ever perform? Like, can you remember your first performance? Did you manage to do a performance with those early bands?
Yeah, I mean, we did, again, we were so small. So it was just like for the school, kind of like school endings or school starts, so like little performances and stuff. But it wasn't until I got a little bit older when I felt like I had like a real experience of like actually, performing your music in front of a crowd. And like the first time I did that, like it was like the worst. It was really like, fuck, I'm never going to be good at standing on a stage. It was just the worst.
When was that?
Yeah, so that was, when I got a little bit older, I guess like 8th grade or something like that, maybe 7th, 8th grade. When you start having, after school, then you'd go to like this place after school and there would be like a band teacher and you could play in bands and stuff. And that was also, I guess, around this time where I started getting into a bit more left of center kind of music.
Yeah.
Not quite in the punk environment and activist world just yet, but like into, the yeah, so like the No Doubt or something like that, and and then I joined this band, like rock band, and we would make our own songs, and I would write lyrics and melodies and stuff, and I remember the first time we had to perform for an audience, and how I was just so nervous before going on. Like it was insane. And on the stage, I was completely stiff in all of my body. And it was so awkward for everybody in the room. And I couldn't really sing and I didn't know what to say. And it was just so awkward. So that was really like ooh, shit. Okay. It's a difficult path that I've chosen.
But you were still resolved to it. You didn't walk off stage that time and think, all right, I'm done.
No, I did stay on stage and I kept being in the band, but I was being like, oh shit, how am I gonna wing this? Also, because at the time it was really like I was not singing like the other ones were singing. Like I didn't have the control over my voice, and like I really did feel like I wasn't really meeting the standard of what people in bands were doing. So I just felt a bit like not so good, and so this insecurity definitely were part of this frozenness and like the awkwardness.
Yeah. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back very shortly with more from Moo. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Moo. Before the break, Moo was talking about the crippling insecurity she felt when playing her early shows, which is where we pick up the conversation. That insecurity, was that something that you were able to, clearly you were able to outgrow it or to perform enough that you could put it to one side?
Yeah, but I think it wasn't until, I actually think there were a couple of years of just like playing in these rock bands and just being super awkward and not really finding my place. I don't think it was until I got in, like, maybe I was like 16 years old or something, like, or 15, when I got introduced to the punk scene in the town that I was from, and like got into punk music and punk rock and like activism and like meeting people in this environment they were so much different than the people in the suburbs that I'd been in bands with. Like all of a sudden it was like other people's dressing in black and like wearing black makeup and like listening to like this outrageous music that our parents hated and stuff, like, just meeting people that all of a sudden that I didn't feel like I was weird, around. Like it, I started feeling like, oh, I was okay, And so in that environment, I met this girl called Josephine, and we formed electro punk girl group. And that's when I think I overcame this insecurity or awkwardness, because all of a sudden it was just about letting go of it all and just like raving around and rolling on the floor and just letting out all this nervous energy. And all of a sudden it became powerful, And I think those years was so, 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 so important for me as an artist and as a performer now, like to actually realize that you don't have to sing perfect or like to sing a certain way or to be in a certain way on stage. You just need to leave it all on stage, Sure. At least that's what I like seeing when I see a performer. I love when they're just blah, And so I feel confident now, like just letting myself go.
Yeah, which was a hugely influential part of your life. That's a MOR. Is that is that how it was pronounced? MOR or more?
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
So that that was the name of that group, and you even, you released the 7-inch Pussy in Your Face and
yes,
toured as well, America and Europe, doing DIY venues. That must have been an incredible learning curve. Like, what did you learn because presumably you're all self-sufficient and do it yourself?
Yeah, and totally. I think I learned so much during those years, like being a performer, of course, like in doing these things, but also I should say like making vinyls and like setting up shows and like going on tour, like technical stuff, how to produce, how to record your vocals. Not that we were great at any of this, to be honest, but like we knew the basics though, making merchandise, like all these things. And again, it was just sort of like, it wasn't like, because it was part of that environment and that community. So it just all seemed like this is how you do it. This is what we do. So yeah, I'm so thankful for my youth, because it was really, when I look back at it, it was like just some golden years,
Yeah. What kind of play were you playing? Squats? What sort of venues were you playing?
Yeah, it was always squats or like little festivals having some kind of political agenda. Like it was very much, again, like very activist related, or punk scene or experimental sort of showcases. Yeah, right. But it was very, very underground. Yeah.
Yeah. What sort of, some of the situations you must have seen, or some of the squats, or, there must have been, were there occasions where you just saw stuff that you never thought you would see?
It's funny. It's a fun question, actually, but because I guess like a lot of things were like, wow, whoa, but I think I was just so used to it because I was in all those years, and like, I guess it's almost like 10 years, I was just so attached to this whole, activist and punk underground environment. So that was sort of like just, that was my community, or like, so I don't know if there was anything that like kind of like were out of the normal that I experienced that wasn't just like kind of part of what it's like to be in that environment.
Okay. And that move into the activist environment and punk rock, now getting to Sonic Youth, if I can ask you a little bit about Sonic Youth and Black Flag and some of those bands you got into, having seen the Spice Girls, and they're all women and they're very empowering, to then see someone like Kim Gordon, also an incredibly powerful woman, what did she represent to you when you were growing up? I
think Kim Gordon was like, and Sonic Youth was one of the first bands that I just really, really, really fell in love with after, again, as I said, like, I guess I sort of had a little bit of an identity crisis, going from like the pop world or whatever and like becoming myself and like realizing that I like punk music and like dressing in black and stuff like that. And Sonic Youth were really the first soundtrack to that whole transition, if you know what I mean, of me coming of age. So, and I think Kim Gordon, I should say, going from the Spice Girls kind of thing, and I really identified with Spotify Spice back then, but then Kim Gordon, all of a sudden, it was like she was my new role model. It was like, oh, she was a woman in a punk band, and she was playing the bass, and like she looked cool, but she also were different than other women that I had been exposed to like at this time, you know. And so it was just like, it was everything I wanted. Like I was just like, oh, you know, I would paint, look, I'm going to sound like a stalker now, but I would paint so many like drawings of her, and like I would write out all their lyrics, like for all their songs. And I mean, not all their songs, because they've made so many songs, but like a lot of the songs. And she just really was just, my dream girl, you know, the person that I wanted to be myself.
Right. And so as you started to become an artist, was it people such as Kim and even the whole Sonic Youth aesthetic, I guess, you know, the way they packaged their art, was that what kind of informed you and what the kind of artist you wanted to be?
It definitely, still to this day, has always been like a big inspiration for me. Like I remember in the beginning when I started doing my own thing as Smø, like I was very inspired by that. Also just that thing about just being crafty and like doing little collages and drawing and painting and being clearly like, organically artistic in the way that you present your music. Yeah, especially in the beginning. I mean, obviously after I ventured into a more mainstream kind of universe, you know, I still wanted to have that DIY involved, but it just became a little bit like I had to negotiate much more. And again, like talking about setting boundaries, that was one of the things where sometimes I felt like I would lose myself a little bit,
right,
to try and go for a more mainstream look or whatever.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things that occurred to me when you were talking about your experiences in More. Is that how you pronounce MOR? Right. That all those things you learned, you know, you had to do it all yourself to then move into the mainstream world where people are doing things for you, but people are also giving you advice on how they think things should be. And you have the skills to do all this stuff, but you have now other people sort of talking to you about what they think should happen. Was that a difficult line to walk? Was that a difficult thing to resolve for yourself?
I mean, in the beginning, I thought it was fine, actually. I mean, I think, to be honest, like one of the things that just made it the most difficult was actually just the time factor, because when you are so lucky to get success with music, it's like all of a sudden, you know, there's so many things, you know, like touring and like meetings, social media. Like, I mean, there's just a lot of things going on. So therefore, that was one of the earliest things where it was like, fuck, okay, how can I do this? How can I keep control of this and just do it myself? It was just, there wasn't time. Because I used to do my own like tour posters as well in the beginning as Smø as well, which is something I love and enjoy. But at some point there just wasn't time. And then I remember when there then was some time and I was trying to get back, then, you know, it also takes a long time to try and explain to people like I wanted like this, you know, and to find the right people. And so I think along the way, some of these things just got neglected because there wasn't really time to do it right. Right. But again, that just comes back to that thing about like, well, quantity over quality. Right. You know, shouldn't be quantity over quality. Like it should be that you have the time to actually make, well, the music, the visual, like all of the things that you really want to do, and then take the time that it takes to do it.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. So in terms of starting to perform as Moo, I believe that you came back from a tour of the States with More, and is that when you moved into Christiania?
Oh, right. Yeah, New York. Yeah.
And moved into Christiania, is that right? And that's where you discovered Logic and started recording as your...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't move to Christiania. I was at Christiania a lot, and I played a lot of my first, I played my first Moo show at Christiania. Okay. But yeah, I think it was during the time that I was in New York with More, and we were on art school, and we were interning for J.D. Sampson from Le Tigre at the time. Right. So it was all really, really exciting. Yeah. But that was actually around the time when I started getting... I mean, I wouldn't say good at using Logic, but again, I knew the basics. Okay. which was just for me like a great tool, because again, you could just sit there and like make the foundation for all your songs.
Yeah.
It was so convenient.
And what did you want this new project to represent?
I mean, I think with More, it had been a lot of like very, very political songs and like kind of tongue in cheek and just like kind of like, wah. And I think what I wanted with the solo stuff that I was working on the side at this time, I just wanted that to, I mean, I wanted it to have the punch and like the energy, but I wanted to also to be a little bit more, I guess, emotional, or like a little bit more like reflecting on how I was actually feeling, rather than just like, fuck the system, like, so I wanted it to have a little bit more of that.
Okay.
And I think that was my starting point. And then again, as I said, I wanted it to have guitars, and I wanted to have like some cool dark synths and to be like indie pop sort of. But I didn't know how to get there at this point.
But you've still got these ambitions. Even for all your punk and anarchist background, you still have pop ambitions? You still have that idea of wanting to be a big pop star?
I mean, I think I was more like, I think at this time in New York, and when I was starting to do my own thing, it was more like I was really looking to artists like Santigold, or like, these artists that was, a bit indie, but also had pop quality, but also had a little bit of a punk nerve in it, So like this sort of like this place in between, I guess.
Right.
That was what I was like inspired by at this time.
Okay.
Which makes sense, it's like marrying like the little kid, the Spice Girl love, and then the like more punk stuff.
And then so it's around 2012, 2013 that Diplo comes into your orbit. And I believe it was sort of towards the end of 2013 that he sent you some beats for you to sing on and to write on, with the idea being that these would be for other artists. But did you also have the state of mind that, well, I'm going to sing the hell out of this and this is going to become mine? This is going to become my song? Was that one of your ways of thinking? Yeah,
I was just about to say like that might have been like his idea, but in my mind, I was like, I am going to sing these. I am going to make a feature for Major Lazer, because that was my biggest dream at the time.
Right.
Because I just thought they were the coolest. Like they were working with all the cool ones, and they had this new sound, and I was just like, it was literally like I would just work on these beats like all night, like all the time. I was just obsessed with the idea, like, pick me, like, yeah.
And eventually he did pick you with, of course, with Lean On.
Yeah.
And that song goes on to become such a huge hit. And all of a sudden you're in this, I guess, the center of the hurricane. You're in this whirlwind.
So wild.
What did that world look like from inside? Having grown up dreaming of pop success, what did it look like once you got there?
Oh my God. It's really difficult to sum it up in a few words. It was because it was, as you say, it was, my mind exploded in a great way. Like, but like it was really like a dream coming true. So it was just like, it was so wild and it was so overwhelming. And then at the same time, it was just, I don't even think I really understood what was going on until almost like a year after, if you know what I mean. It was like when I was in the center of the hurricane, or what it was you just said, like, I definitely, I didn't really get it, I think. I mean, I just knew that, oh my God, I'm busy, and oh my God, everybody want to work with me all of a sudden. And like, that is amazing, but also like, what do I want? And, and woo! It was just a mix of all the emotions. It was just high energy,
Yeah.
High energy.
And how did you learn to deal with that, to cope with it, and to find clarity?
I don't really think I did, to be honest. I think I just went with it. And that was when I think things actually started to be it started to get a little bit hard, I guess, was that thing of like trying to think clear while all this was going on, and like trying to be like, okay, this is a great moment for me, for us. Like, this is amazing, but what is it that I now, as the solo artist, maybe what is it that I want? But it was really hard for me to truly feel what that was, because it was all just like, let's just go, And actually, it's not that I don't I totally understand why I felt like that. And I also think it's a good idea to just go with the flow in a way. And so I don't regret anything about that, actually. I guess the only thing, if I was to say something that I wish, then I guess maybe I wish that I or my team was a little bit more experienced. So we would have taken not necessarily a break, but just like a step back and be like, okay, let's focus. What is it that we want? And let's just for a moment.
Yeah.
But again, no regrets. I don't want it to sound like I'm regretting anything. This is just me being clever now, like looking back,
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there, did you have the confidence from the off when you mentioned a lot of people wanted to start working with you, and then, you have features with Justin Bieber, for example, collaborating with people such as Justin Bieber. And did you have that confidence from the off that I belong here? I can do this?
Yeah, I think I had that. I think I definitely felt, I did feel like I deserved it. That's a weird word, actually. Let's not say deserved, but I did feel like, yes, I did this. I felt proud of it, and I felt like part of it. I guess my insecurity at this time, I think, was more that thing of but what do I want? So I guess I felt very confident when it came to like my singing and presenting myself and being in that whole singing with my raspy voice and just being super pop, but also kind of edgy, But I think my insecurity was but again, what is my next thing as a solo artist, and what is my sound? What is that going to be?
Yeah. So did that then impact when you come to do your second record, Forever Neverland? Was that impacted by that confusion about I need to find what I want to do, but there's all this other stuff happening? Yeah. Do you hear that in that record?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's funny because at the time I was just feeling so sort of confused and lost and stressed out and stuff. But then it's it's almost, to me now, this album makes more sense now, because when I look at it, I'm I was lost, and I was sort of holding on to something, and I was caught in between. So in a way, I think the album is even I think it's better now than I feel more connected to it now than I did at the time, because at the time I just fucking didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But now I'm oh yeah, Karen, but that's where you were. You were lost, and you were out of your body, and you were trying to, merge these different universes, and you couldn't really. But that was sort of what it was about.
Yeah. And is that idea of Neverland representing eternal youth? Is that thing that you were kind of reaching for, that true self that made you who you were? Is that what that represents?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was again, at the time, I think I was definitely trying to hold on to something, or searching for some kind of searching desperately to feel connected or feel this is it. But I was sort of floating outside of my body a little bit at the time. And again, of course, that comes down to that fact that I just was burned out. I hadn't had taken that time. So it made sense that it sort of became a little bit this magical world, and Peter Pan, and
Yeah.
And again, I think it was also that thing, I told you in the beginning of this chat, when I stopped touring and I had this realization, it was all of a sudden, it just hit me, all these things that I had been postponing to sort of deal with, and personal stuff and work stuff that I just hadn't really dealt with. And I think the thing is, when doing Forever Neverland, there actually was an urgency in me to deal with these things, but I didn't. And that's the whole kind of being distant. It's that thing of not wanting to deal with the fact that actually I have changed, but I didn't want to realize at that time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And is that where you can hear that in a song like Blur, for example? I think it's
for instance, yeah. And Blur is one of my favorite songs, because actually Blur, I feel sort of really captures what is going on at the time. So, that is one of my favorite songs, actually. I'm really happy about that one.
Yeah. So everything you've just told me, and now all that leading up to the creation of Motordrome, as you were writing Motordrome, were there certain revelations for you? You mentioned that, sometimes you need to write stuff to realize that's how you're feeling. Was that coming out in Motordrome?
Yeah, for sure. I think with Motordrome, it's all these different facets, all these different sides to what I was going through. Again, as I said, some of the songs were definitely a bit more reminiscent, but also kind of like just internal conversations, like being a little bit sad and gloomy. And then some of them, again, is a bit more about taking control of the situation, regaining that control and forgiveness, but using it, like turning sadness into some sort of like a power or like a strength. So it's different kind of sides of that whole process.
Yeah. It must be a very cathartic album when you finished it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember?
Yeah,
do you remember hearing it for the first time when it was all finished and how you felt?
Do I actually? Because it was such a process, you know, like just with the track list and like finishing everything last minute and getting it to mix. So I wonder if I had that actual moment. I guess I did. So I think the moment where that happened was when I played it for my two best girlfriends, and we had like we were drinking, we were like getting whiskey and like just listening to the album, all of us from the beginning to the end. And I think that was when I was like, yes, that was it. You know, that was the album, you know, when I had that feeling. Yeah.
That's a great feeling to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Karen, just to finish up, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people you'd give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
I mean, there's so many. Yeah. Where to start? I mean, definitely, you know, my early collaborators, even if I don't work with them anymore, but like they were some of the people to help me get started. You know, my first manager and like my first producer, Ronnie Vida, like in Mø. But I also want to say though, like credit to the activist and punk environment in Denmark that really, I think, helped me accept who I am and be the artist that I am today. That was so important. Yeah. And then, I mean, Diplo as well. I owe a lot to him as well for actually believing me, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But do you mean for this album in particular, though, or just in general?
Just in general. It can be for this album. It's just anyone who springs to mind. But if that's all you'd like, that's okay.
No, but also
there's so many.
Jeff Lurch and Melissa. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Oh my God, I'm gonna start like the Academy Award show, like just like because like honestly, because really, I think it is so important to credit and like remember and talk about these people because like there's so many people that helps you become what you are and what you do. But that's also why I always sort of get like, I almost freak out when doing, because it's like, there's just so many,
of course,
that really needs acknowledgement, you know, so it's like, yeah.
It takes a village.
Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you very quickly, you mentioned again those anarchist groups and I guess they provided you with a sense of community. When you were growing up, did you feel like you didn't have that? Like there was an element of you that felt like a little bit of a loner and this anarchist community gave you that home, or was it not that extreme?
See, I was lucky because I always had friends, but I think I just felt very different than my friends. And I didn't feel like that my friends or my environment in those early years really understood me or had the same interests, or I should say, like I felt like an outsider in lack of a better word. So finding that community just really all of a sudden made me feel like I was home, which is a fantastic feeling.
Absolutely. Karen, thank you so much for your time. It's been so great to chat with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really nice to talk to you.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. Big thanks to Mø for her time, and thank you for listening. Just a reminder that Mø's new album, Motordrome, is out now. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's Humans of Music, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.